Testing, testing.
So nothing's happening yet because we're going to do that for the audience. We're going to set these here so nobody's going to accidentally pour wine on the table, right? You're well-behaved Bohemian. All right. Excellent. Good motor skills. All right. Excellent.
We can't fish there.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce Jordan Freeman, I believe it is, right? Freeman?
Testing, yep, Freeman. And gonna be playing a film at the end featuring Jim. Yeah, it seems like we're up in the speakers. Is it good on the stream?
We are. I think we are. Let's see here. We'll do this. Take this off. Phone. And this one off. All right. So now the home audience gets a hint that there's actually something going on at Bird and Beckett. So if you want to send a quick text message or Facebook message to any friends and family and tell them they can tune in, they can. I'm going to adjust the mood lighting a little bit more. Now somebody here will introduce you to this reading. I think I'll ask Lucy to do that because she knows the most about the various moving parts of this.
Yeah.
Would you tell them what they're about to encounter?
Okay.
That would be great. Stand in that microphone and I'll
Okay.
make sure it all looks good from back here.
Okay. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm Lucy Day, and I'm going to be reading my poetry a little later. But the first two readers will be Jim LeCuyre and Joyce Jenkins. And I'll introduce Jim, who's going to read first. I'm really happy to be introducing Jim, and I'm happy to be reading with him. Jim is the author of 4 books. He has a poetry collection called Brick for Officer Pup, and he has 3 prose books. He's mostly a prose writer, but he does write poetry too. He has a couple of short story collections called Duck Lessons and Threnody for Sturgeon. And he has a book of short stories called Stories for Clever Children. But they are also good for curious adults too. Jim, in addition to having written 4 books, he has 3 master's degrees. He's a retired English teacher, a high school English teacher, and he's also a fisherman. But people never retire from being a fisherman or a writer, so I know Jim would be happy to have you read his books and also go fishing with him. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Now, Jim, we'll adjust the height of that microphone for you when you're in a position where you know where you're going.
Lift it up a little.
I'll do that, but you decide you're going to sit on that stool or you're going to stand. What are you going to do?
Okay. Well, I'm Jim LeCuyre,
Okay,
and
let's now adjust this before you get too into it. I
Okay.
think now we want to be able to see you.
see
So
me?
we're going to go like this.
Nice.
I think
Is that all?
we're pros
Can
here.
everybody hear me clearly?
It's a little echoey, but
Echoey?
we're good.
Okay. Well, I'm going to read something very old, and then something a little bit much newer, and then something quite new. And I'm going to read from this book called Threnody for Sturgeon. A threnody is a sad old song for something going or dying out. And this is a picture of Tomales Bay, where I spent some 15 years trying to catch fish and make a living, and I barely did any of that. Managed to do it. Okay. Start here. I don't know if everybody knows Point Reyes and that area around there. Point Reyes is kind of separate from the mainland. It's traveling in one direction, and the other in the mainland is traveling in a different direction. And during the 1906 earthquake, the San Andreas Fault opened up Tomales Bay, which is 15 miles long and a mile wide. Anyway, it's very beautiful, and there was for a while good fishing there. Point Reyes North. You are here on the beach after many decades. You'd forgotten it. The sand is yellow-brown, a mingling of fossils and new shells, mostly clams, all worked by wind and surf washed ashore and mixed with earth from sedimentary cliffs. The daily northwest wind has blown in with an offshore fog bank, and the blue-green sea has turned gray. You recall you always needed a coat as you walked along holding hands with Linda 50 years ago. She was beautiful. She loves you, only you don't know what love is. You think it's sex. And because sex with Linda is less than it was a few weeks past, you think her love is failing. It's your love that's fading. You know the ocean, how it beats you up, how it's beautiful, how it can kill. It doesn't love you at all. People you know have drowned. Linda gives you everything she has, only you don't know what that means. She's a feast. You nibble at it and cast it aside. You still feel that small hand in yours in that cold, windswept day on that wide beach, a half-century past, where warm brown flesh and yellow shells have been ground into golden sand and mixed with dark earth from tumbling cliffs, filled with almost forgotten desires. That's it. Thank you. I had a teacher once, a writer, Wright Morris, some of you may know that name, and he said, if you're writing about something, nostalgia beats sex 10-1. Okay. I'll start with this one. A New York steak speaks out. I was once a pet cow. My beloved mistress has become the demon guardian of the pit, and I'm a threat to her culinary skill. 6 of her friends are critics for the New York Review of Barbecues, and I'm to be marinated, cooked, and eaten for their next edition. The coals aren't ready, I tell her. The marinade needs more garlic. Don't slice me up, I say. She says, I'm making fun of her. Not me, never. I would never do it. I just want to know if you can cook me through without burning the raw spot next to my heart. I want you to be proud of me one last time. I want to taste good. That's it. Okay. These are more like poems rather than prose poems, but I don't know. I don't know if I write poems or prose or what. Ron Valentine and his daughter. It's Halloween. Ron dresses his 6-year-old daughter as an Oscar Mayer wiener. She's so cute. Her little smile glows in the middle of a big brown hot dog. So eager. Off she goes for candy. In a half hour, she returns, tears streaming down the front of her hot dog. They'll laugh at me, she cries. They think I'm a penis. Ron says, I'll fix you. He places a gold band around the middle of her hot dog, and now she's a giant brown cigar, a modern metamorphosis. Her smile returns. Off she goes for more candy. Okay. This is a little bit longer prose poem from a visit to New Zealand. Cook Strait, Wellington, New Zealand, June 1st, 2003. A serene bay on Cook Strait connecting the Pacific Ocean to the Tasman Sea. A white-haired man in orange gumboots surf casts a 13-foot rod with a spinning reel. He places his rod in a sand spike and sits waiting on a red chili bin. He's using green mussels for bait. Next to him, a younger man in a black sweatshirt and navy blue watch cap sets up his own surf casting rod and casts and sits waiting on a blue chili bin. There's a lot of waiting when you're fishing. The bay is calm, but offshore, a mile or so, in unprotected waters, whitecaps rage. Gulls dive close by. Gentle swells drift in, break on black rocks near shore. A curve of volcanic hills with a line of homes set at the base run along the street across from our beach. From time to time, northwesterly gusts sweep around a point of land and lift swirls of suds from the otherwise unruffled waters of the bay. It's a beautiful evening, all in all. High clouds soften the sun, and the wind shifts and howls at us, full gale just for a moment, then calm. 3 p.m. Looks like night, almost. We are so far south. There's news on the old man's portable radio. The star of New Zealand rugby, Jonah Lomu, needs a new kidney. He has nephrotic syndrome. Terence O'Brien, senior fellow at the Center for Strategic Studies, states, the new U.S. strategy is intended to secure American domination of the world. War is a policy option. I've met O'Brien. He said hello, but after that, nothing. The sky grows darker. Sun, faintly visible, veiled by high racing cirrus, is about to drop behind gorse and cabbage and live cabbage tree-covered hills. Across the strait, snow-covered mountains of South Island glow in the late sun. The younger fisherman sets up a rod for his girlfriend, who sits reading. She wears a white watch cap with a jaunty black top knot. The young man pulls in a 3-pound red cod. Not so highly prized, he says when I go to admire his catch. But good enough, mate. All Kiwis are fond of the word mate. The Picton ferry steams past, headed for Picton. The older fisherman pulls in a smaller fish, and a gull tries to snatch it as it is dragged across the wet sand. A black lab gallops past, driving a line of resting seagulls up, floating defiantly on the breeze just out of reach above the dog. He leaps. No weapons of mass destruction are found in Iraq. 4/5 of the world's fisheries have been depleted in the past 50 years. The girlfriend of the young fisherman awkwardly throws a stick into the water, and the lab retrieves it. Again, 2 gray schnauzers leap and play with the lab, try to sneak the stick away from him. It's 3:51, winter in New Zealand. The sun sets at 5:15. Richard Chamberlain reveals he's gay. I'm not starving. I'm not afraid anymore, he says. He's 68 years old and no longer a leading man. More than 600 sea lions are starving back in Monterey, California. President Bush announces the discovery of 2 Iraqi laboratories that might have contained biological weapons. This proves, he said, that those who say we haven't found banned weapons are 100% wrong. He declares the Iraq war over and turns his attention to Iran. Tomorrow there's a celebration of Queen Elizabeth's coronation. Long live the Queen. She's 80. No fish for me today. Maybe it's my bait. Okay. Hey. Thank you. Okay, and I'm going to read this. This is the most recent thing, stories for clever children. So if you have a clever child, who doesn't? Okay. I'll read The Boy Who Wanted to Fly Around the World. A few years ago, when a boy named James was having a very hard time at home and getting into trouble with almost everyone, his grandpa Jim gave him a drum. The drum was blood red, stained around the edges and cream white around the sides, but black as night when there is no moon and only the brightest of stars on the top and bottom of the drum. In fact, there seemed to be a few stars on top of the drum, stars that vanished as you looked right at them. The black bottom was like the darkness you might find in a deep cave in the center of the earth. Just as it looks, said Grandpa Jim, this is a magic drum. If you bang on it just right and dance, you can learn to fly all to the far corners of the world. You will be able to see China and Russia and India and even penguins at the South Pole. You'll be able to learn everything from the people there, and you will be able to bring that knowledge back home. That knowledge will quickly make everything right. There's only one catch. What's that? Asked James. You'll have to face 3 tests. First, you will have to learn to trust yourself. Well, said James, I already trust myself. Oh, said Grandpa Jim, let's see if you do. Are you ready? Yes, said James. Start beating on the drum very softly. James started banging so softly that the drum could hardly be heard. After a long while, he asked, what do I do next? Ah, said Grandpa Jim, don't you know? James really wanted to fly to all the corners of Earth and learn all the wisdom others would teach him. But first he was depending on his grandfather. Grandpa Jim was old and wise. Surely he must know what to do. How could a boy be expected to be as wise as his grandfather? I don't know what to do next, said James. Don't you trust yourself? His grandfather asked. Not wanting to seem stupid, James said nothing. James got nervous and began banging on the drum harder and harder. When he saw the face of his scowling grandfather, he banged softer and softer until he stopped playing entirely. Grandpa Jim walked away, shaking his head sadly. James worried he hadn't pleased his grandfather. The next day, Grandpa Jim came with a pony. James was very excited by this. He had always wanted to ride a horse. This horse was tan, with a large black mane and a star in the middle of his forehead. This is a magic horse, his grandfather said. It can carry you to all the corners of the world. James was pleased. His grandfather still loved him enough to bring him a horse. Is this my horse? I love you, grandfather. I love the horse. Love is part of the question, but this is not your horse. Not yet. Only your love can win it. This horse belongs to itself. The answer to the question, is this my horse, is the answer to the question, what comes before love? James thought hard. I don't know, grandfather. What comes before love? His grandfather looked at him for a long time before speaking. You must trust yourself to know the answer. His grandfather then led the horse away. James felt like crying. He really wanted to ride that horse, and he really wanted his grandfather to love him. Tears dripped down his cheeks. He felt lost, like an orphan. His parents always seemed to be arguing. Even his little sister, Sophie, would sometimes pick on him. He didn't want to fight with his sister, and he was very tired of his parents arguing so much. He wanted to run and never stop until he came to the edge of the world, which everyone said was far, far away. He would jump right over the edge and vanish. James cried that night, hiding his face in his pillow. In the morning, James washed the tears off his cheeks and got on a horse and put on a brave, smiling face. When he walked into the front room, he found Grandpa Jim holding a wooden box with a large, angry tomcat. It was orange and black, striped like a small tiger. It was spitting mad. I captured this cat last night in my alley, Grandpa Jim said. I thought you might like to make a pet of it. James looked into the furious eyes of the alley cat and realized that he and the cat both had great problems. The cat wanted to escape, and James wanted to make things better, but didn't know how. His grandfather had tried to help him. His grandfather had offered to teach him to play the drum. He had even brought James a magic horse. Both times, James failed to understand. The cat was slashing at the wooden slats of the prison. It seemed as if it might break free at any moment. It had long, long claws and sharp teeth, and all the hair on its back stood up in fury. It looked huge. If James were to pick it up, it would surely cut its hands into bloody masses with its claws. Grandpa Jim said, "This is not a magic cat or anything like that. It's just a plain old back alley tomcat. But it's plenty angry. Can you help me?" James thought for a moment. It seemed obvious what to do. He would feed it and bring it a good drink of milk. As he opened the cage to place its saucer of milk and a piece of meat inside, the cat slashed James' hand. The cut began to bleed, but James didn't cry out. He knew about cats. He had once had a cat, Dr. Huer. James had been scratched and even bitten by Dr. Huer. Cats could be sweet and cats could be mean, depending on the situation. A cat in a cage would naturally be angry, like people, like his own father and mother. James sucked the slash on his hand, went into the bathroom, and found some medicine to put on the wound. Returning, he said to his grandfather, "I will take care of the cat. If it's a good cat and settles down, and if my parents approve, I will make a pet of it. It's not magic, and it's not a horse, but it's what I have, and I know how to take care of it." The grandfather left and didn't come back for several days. James fed the cat table scraps and talked to it gently. He and the cat got used to each other. James let the cat out of the cage to explore the house. James talked to the cat and told him how angry his parents sometimes seemed to be with each other. The cat would rub against his leg. Since they were so much alike, James and the cat began to depend on each other. Still, the cat was just an ordinary cat. It's not a magic drum or a magic horse that would carry James to the far corners. It was a stray from an alley, but the cat was right here with James, and they began to like each other. He named the cat Love. When the grandfather returned, he found the cat on James' lap, purring away. Grandpa Jim said, "You have passed the first test." In caring for the cat, James had forgotten about the test. "I have?" "Yes," said Grandpa Jim. "You have learned to help someone besides yourself, and you have learned that love is important. You have learned to trust yourself and what to do next, and you have learned the answer to the question, what comes before love?" "I have?" James asked. "What is it?" Grandpa Jim merely smiled and walked away. James banged on his drum louder until the stars on top seemed to dance. For a moment, James felt as if he were falling into the darkness of the drum's endlessly deep bottom. And James knew that he would spend a lifetime trying to understand the question, what comes before love? Such a simple question, too. Only 4 words. Okay, that's it for me. Joyce, you're next, I think. Oh, good.
Touch that too much. You gonna sit on the stool or stand?
I'm just going to talk
Then
briefly.
let me raise this for you.
Thank you, man.
My pleasure.
All righty. All right, Jim. Our next reader will be Joyce Jenkins, who's the editor and director of Poetry Flash, which I hope you know is an online literary journal and calendar. She produces our Poetry Flash reading series. She produces the annual Northern California Book Awards. She produces, she's a producer. She produces the annual Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival. And while she's doing all that, she manages to find a little time for her own excellent poetry, and you're going to hear some of it tonight. So here she is, Joyce Jenkins.
Whoops. Ships in the night. It's all good.
You wanna
Okay,
perch on the
stand.
stool or stand? Well,
Yeah.
that might be a good height.
Is that all right?
Kind of. I think.
How is
You wanna see
this?
her okay?
Seem
Should
all
I
right?
lower it an inch or two? Yes. Jane says yes. Was that a yes? Lower it an inch or two? Yes, please. How about an inch or two?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Eric, from this wonderful bookstore, Bird and Beckett. And thank you, Richard. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Jim. Okay, I just thought I'd bring a potpourri for you today. Here's a poem. West Berkeley is where the Poetry Flash is, where the Poetry Flash office is in a live-work unit, and where I live. Peyote Poem 2. Each day dawns as a seed, night inside the day,
pearl inside the orchid, the smooth wall inside the cave, seabed slick with moisture, the sharp scent of oxygen made by the algae and the mud mixed with pigeon scat. The wild parrots pirouette across the sky from tree to tree, wheeling and screeching their homage to free air and the pull of tides. Every step we take a wonder. The ground is strewn with microscopic miracles, little broken mirrors reflecting sky. One vibration, one oscillation, one EKG of shoreline, of star nursery nebulae cloud. Our minds dancing on the same rope line, up and down like a rodeo lasso, then flat on the floor. Inside the sexual oyster, we swoon. And this is a poem that, let's see. I think I'll skip ahead. Actually, this is a poem that Jim usually asks me to read, so I'm going to preempt him and just read it without him even bringing it up. It's called Discovery. Let's take this cool and light. The voice, my voice, but perhaps yours, resonates from a particular place, tremor pool of the brain. That is to say, the body, but also its less physical webs, such as soul arc, aura. The point is midway in a clearing. It is night and the snow is incandescent. To say this is to say a puzzle. The voice is authoritative, but not low, not mundane, and not vibrationally low. The voice is not conscious of its act. It is simple articulation, out-of-sync tongue earnestly dubbing the undermine's script. In the dark, the upheld signing hand cannot own its deep perceptions, can swim in its burning, freezing seas, only in sleep. There is no dialogue, only the breeze over rippling tides, nonverbal call and response, self to self without consciousness of self, and so with no lack of poise or balance. Through the glittery night, the determined snowflake glides. Crazy pinball pings softly between the legs of the moon, swirls the silvery orchard, low bell stroke far away, dark tower on the horizon. Luminous, luminous, tremulous quake at the red-hot center wherever you are, opening your mouth to speak. True pitch, tuning fork quiver, wild spitfire, nerve to the heart. Here's a poem that I wrote for a friend of mine who was, I'm originally from Detroit, and that's where she lives. She's a singer-songwriter, and she had ALS. And I went to visit her and wrote this poem. Robin's Song. She packed us a soda in the little cooler. She went into the closet to look for it, leaning on her IV pole, hand on hip. The straws were a brilliant addition. He wants to tear out the wall so she can see the garden. She will tell him where to plant from her wheelchair. She was fitted with braces on her hands and feet, but first she turned the portfolio pages, studied the art. I was looking out of the window, and suddenly there was no glass. She moved the flowers from the table. her little dog Guppy squirming for air. She twirled her lasso, her feeding tube. Spring hadn't hit yet. For her, each season would make one more bow. One last cowgirl adventure to see Old Faithful. On the road, an emergency room, jean jacket she never wore, gnashing paralysis, morphine, an aria sung at Christmas time. She scrawled out quiet thank yous and goodbyes, curled fingers beckoning her subjects, her loved ones. She asked for her hats, for a little extra mojo. Their princess needed her red beret. Her magic wand signed jokey little miracles in pulsing concentric circles. But first she will press the locomotive key, the rhino roar, her computer a deadpan translator, a cappella undertaker, raging passive-aggressive understudy, sotto voce mechanical beast, trapped on a delicate stage. Narrative had become impossible for us, and grammar a tall, cool tower. I'm not rich, so I want to sleep on the futon, he said. Okay, I said, though you make no sense at all. You've lost it too. We tremble and laugh. What do you make of the indigo out the window, I said. Blue darker than night. Jupiter hovering near the moon. All a mystery again, more so now than when we were young and everything new. Now the mystery hangs in the air, like a fog of skunk and gasoline, dancing to a slow country waltz. Pull the green grass over my shoulders, she said. I don't see it, he said, but I hear it, the ancient keening, like a big river rushing. The house is still a shroud, yet a robin redbreast sits in the snowy window, shares my coffee. My story is over, she said. My story is over. Pull the green grass over my shoulders. Keep my poem in a carved wooden box. This is, she had the kind of ALS that takes your voice out first. So she spoke through her computer. Here's a poem set in Berkeley, where, of course, I live. And it's, my daughter's here, so this is lovely. And I wrote this poem thinking about her and then thinking about all sorts of things. Just a day in the life of Berkeley. Taking my daughter to college. When writing about great loss, begin with the movement, not I feel. Grace Paley. I was walking down Telegraph, noticing movement, picking my way through the veil of pierced bodies, the zebra tattoo sign, the music shop display, disheveled robots made from dog food cans and old CDs, unraveled cassettes for hair, followed the flow to the Café Med, to its shiny aqua mural still reflecting a haunted Greek in Pompeii, observant emigres behind the counter, cafe where I too have been 86'd, chased for a wandering latte glass by an exiled man with wild eyes and fiercer temper, ghost image of the bookstore flower stand, as Hassan the florist offended me, shouted him down, the plush dream roses opening. Walking down Telly, my hands became spontaneous language, signs I knew no context for, spoke in tongues, sang like birds. There was something inside of me, the cool, cold cylinder of me, sweating out images like toxins. What I never should have seen was now tattooed forever on some part of my psyche, untouched by light. a complex Aboriginal message encrypted on the back of my neck. It was a beautiful fall day, with wisps of clouds so ethereal they cast snow shadows. Like a patient etherized on the horizon. How did you put it, Mr. Elliot? Is this why you chose Britain over Missouri? Oh, the fineness of this light, and how much the racing mind can have and may not want. My hands wanted to tell the story, though my spirit had already classified it. My father, my daughter. Now I'm in an airplane, suddenly realize the rusty iron curtain of the landscape below is really the deciduous turning of autumn, not a wave of red algae or red Utah rock blooming on the green horizon's tide. Instead, the spinning discs, these particular New England orangey browns, dip below my convictions, the receding horizon, oblivious as escaped lingerie unfurling from a pant leg, at first unseen, then pressing where it hurts. And, here's a little poem about Oakland. Just a little impression of Oakland. Oakland paradigm. Every day we paint a new picture. Paper stars hang from the ceiling with silver thread. New people, new hats make the old one obsolete. The street is covered with charcoal gray clouds, a neon marquee. Every day we need a place to begin, a place to be glad about. We went to the pub and found cheer in the glasses. The words danced on the table, high on the chairback. These streets have held their space forever as the West Coast gets. My story unraveled, hung off my sleeve. What joy to share the old wood, brown brick, the raucous music, scooters living free, the silken air, the golden light, rosy orange, bicycles whizzing past. Kindness dances on the edge of the razor. Kindness skids like drops into hot grease. Work calls with reminders, a siren. Surrounded with beauty, I find my way home. Lights reflected in the water. Soft slap of lake on rowboats. Terracotta tile, Art Deco storefronts, the wide stone plaza, boomboxes, pho, noodles, sushi villa, and Thai cuisine. The honk of geese. And, whoopsie, I'll just finish up with, I'll just finish up with one little thing. It's bringing us back to Berkeley, where Poetry Flash is, to the, it's about working on Poetry Flash, and it's also about the Mexican restaurant that has kept me alive and my family alive for many years. Piano Man. Friday night, beautiful jazz piano at Picante's. 2 people in the room, 3 grubby skateboarders and several ticket holders waiting for their food in the next. The music, simple yet impossibly lovely, impossibly complicated, pours out of the shiny black spinet. The piano player notices me listening. He can hear me listening. He turns his head slightly to look. I look away to avoid eye contact because the music is impossibly intimate. How can I tell him that it's okay, that no one but me hears, that I will walk out and down 6th Street and he will be alone, but that he must not stop playing. That he is not alone as long as he sounds, that he means as long as he sounds, that he cannot stop playing. He must not. So, thank you very much. So Richard and I are going to be ships in the night again.
As long as we don't capsize.
That's what I'm aiming for, not to capsize.
Well, all right, Joyce Jenkins. Our third reader is Lucy Day, who is really a complete woman of letters. And I'm going to be pressed to remember all the things that she's written and done, but she's got a riveting memoir called Married at 14, which I would like to detail some of it, but I'll control myself. And she is the publisher of Scarlet Tanager Press, which has some really exciting new books. She's published many books of poetry. The most recent is The Birds of San Pancho, which she's going to be reading from tonight. And she's got a broadside that is from that book, the names of states, and that's going to be on sale tonight. So let's give her a warm welcome, Lucy Day.
Okay. 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 Is that good? Okay. Thanks. Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Eric, for hosting us, and thank you, Jim, for conceiving of this event. So, as Richard said, I'm going to read from my latest book, Birds of San Pancho and Other Poems of Place. And this was published by a San Francisco publisher, Blue Light Press. The book is divided into two sections. In the first half, called Foreigner, all the poems take place in various countries of Latin America and Europe. And then in the second half of the book, called Between the Two Shining Seas, all of the poems take place here in the U.S. So I'll start out by reading some of the poems from the Foreigner section. And I think I'll start with the title poem, Birds of San Pancho. This bird that on the cover of the book is a great kiskadee, and there's a great kiskadee mentioned in the poem, Birds of San Pancho. And this poem takes place in the state of Nayarit, Mexico. A great kiskadee sits on the casa wall, belting its exuberant song above the dusty cobblestone street. The bird is masked like a raccoon, its breast yellow as the butterflies that flit amid hibiscus and bougainvillea. Far from the casa, where palms and maya nut trees grow lushly, a yellow-winged cacique waits in the paperbark tree, the lemony underside of its long tail cascading like silk. It surveys the scene, ignoring the golden-cheeked woodpecker, streak-backed oriole, flycatchers, and scrub euphonia sharing the selva. Farther down the dirt road, where red ants live inside acacia thorns. A pale cow wanders alone, snubbing the fat chachalacas, singing chachalaca as I pass by. It seems the birds are out to cheer me, though I know food and mates are what they're after. A whole flock of orange-fronted parakeets feasts on berries overhead. Later at the lagoon, a great blue heron, a little blue heron, a green heron, a night heron, 2 great egrets, 8 snowy egrets, and 20 cattle egrets gather while brown pelicans dive for fish and the sun's bright disk sinks into the sea. When it disappears, the egrets rise in groups and pairs to settle in 2 coconut palms for the night. Oh, to sit up there too, safe, having eaten my fill, with folded wings, watching over creation. And believe it or not, that's a winter poem. But this time of year, I like to go south, and so that poem was written in February, and now I'm going to read a January poem from the Galapagos, and this is called Time on Rábida. On Rábida, where the sand is red, 3 white-cheeked pintails swam in a brackish lagoon beneath a ruddy hill of basaltic rock formed when magma from an ancient volcano cooled in the sea. It didn't matter what time it was when I was there, what day, or even what year. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow were all the same to the finches. Passing saltbush, prickly pear cacti, and leafless incense trees adorned with tufts of moss, I spotted a marine iguana lounging near an outcropping of rock where a lone cactus grew high above the waves. And somewhere on the path, I lost my watch with the brown leather band and round face encircled by rhinestones. I was happy to be timeless like the warblers and flycatchers, and wondered if a bird might find my watch and use it to decorate its nest. But then someone found it and gave it back to me with a broken band, and I looked at it sadly, longing for wings, a swift escape. And I'm going to read another poem now that deals with time, and this is called Dining Alone in Athens, and it takes place at Strophe Restaurant. On a rooftop beneath the Acropolis, I have sea bass wrapped in vine leaves, served with white wine sauce and olives. Yes, a true feast. The Erechtheion and Parthenon rise above me, columns lit and glowing against the darkening sky. Though cracked and crumbling after 2,500 years, they're more intact than the Arch of Hadrian and once towering temple of Zeus on a field below. Athena planted the first olive tree here in a contest against Poseidon, whose magic was seawater. The 12 gods of Olympus declared her the winner and gave the city her name. But now the old gods are gone, their statues in museums, their temples in ruins. Around me, parties of men in short-sleeved shirts and women in sleeveless white dresses chatter. Couples gaze at each other, speaking softly. I order baklava to share with my husband, age 76. Who waits neither sick nor well back in our hotel room. And I complain to the moon that even the gods are fleeting. But I like that story, the tree, the goddess who holds her own against the sea. And Now we're going to move on to France. This is called Foreigner. The women here wear tight pants, stylish boots, and cute jackets. In my walking shoes, baggy khakis, and Eddie Bauer hoodie, I am an obvious foreigner, une Américaine à Paris. When I catch a man staring at me in the Champ de Mars metro station, I doubt he's admiring my beauty. More likely, he's noting that I am anxious and disoriented. A good target for a pickpocket. Perhaps he is one, like the guy who got my coin purse and keys years ago at the St. Paul station, or the one who snatched my money and makeup bag in Dublin while I studied a map. A woman's voice announces in English over the paging system, "There is a pickpocket in the station. Watch your purse and wallet." I clutch my purse and more tightly, change trains at Neuilly-Port-Maillot, make it back to Jean's apartment in the Marais, where I've left my passport and check register with all the passwords to access my credit cards online. The check register is missing. Searching my luggage again and again, I try to concentrate on Chagall's Bride and Groom flying over the city, the view of Notre Dame from a cloud, myself an invisible dot somewhere down there, needing to descend the 4 flights of tilted stairs, walk past the old well festooned with flowers, find a bistro with a little round table out front, and order duck pâté with a glass of Sancerre or a crisp Vouvray. And I will read one more from France. And this is called Child's Grave and Finery. A 10,000-year-old grave of a child about 3 years old, covered with ochre dust and marked with 3 stones, nestled in a rock shelter under an overhanging cliff in southern France. More than 1,500 beads carefully carved from seashells and animal teeth adorned his neck, wrists, elbows, and knees. Marks inside the beads show a needle pass through them. They were sewn onto clothes that disintegrated long ago. Scratches and nicks on the outside imply the child wore these beaded clothes when he was playing. Anthropologists say this finery must signify hereditary social status. But maybe he was an only child whose grandmother polished the beads and sewed them onto his clothes while his father hunted and his mother gathered berries. The way a grandmother today might knit or crochet a sweater or blanket. Or maybe his parents were so broken by his death that they sewed all their own beads onto his burial clothes, so anyone finding his grave would know how much he mattered. So I saw this child's skeleton and these beads at the National Museum of Prehistory in Les Azes, France. And I just wept when I saw this. It was heartbreaking, even after 10,000 years. And now I'm going to read a few poems from the second half of the book, Between the Two Shining Seas, and I'm going to start with the poem Names of the States, which I also have on this broadside. Alabama for the Alabama tribe, forced from Alabama to Texas when white people claimed their land in 1805. Alaska for the Aleut word Alyeska, meaning mainland, the place toward which the sea flows. Arizona, the word for small spring in the Owadam language of a Southwest desert people who couldn't vote until 1948. Arkansas, another name for the Quapaws, the downstream people who were removed to Oklahoma from their ancestral lands. Connecticut, from the Algonquian word for long river place. Delaware, from Baron de la Warr, Virginia's first governor, whose name rechristened the local Lenni Lenape, the first tribe to sign a treaty with the U.S. Hawaii, for Hawaii Loa, discoverer of the islands in Polynesian myth. Idaho, maybe Shoshone for the sun comes down the mountain, or the Apache name for the Comanches who drove them from the southern plains. Illinois, a French transliteration of Alinwi, the Ojibwe word for the Anoka, whose 13 tribes were reduced to 5 by European disease. Indiana, land of the Indians, the Delaware, Piankashaw, Kickapoo, Wea, Shawnee, Miami, and Potawatomi, who were mostly removed by 1846. Iowa, the Dakota name for the Iowa tribe, meaning sleepy ones. Kansas, the Dakota word for the South Wind people, whose last fluent speaker of the Kansa language died in 1983. Kentucky, derived from the Iroquoian word for on the meadow. Massachusetts, people of the Great Hills, that is, the Blue Hills south of Boston Harbor, who were decimated by smallpox in 1633. Michigan, from Michigamaa, great water in the language of the Ojibwe, who, like so many others, didn't understand the treaties ceding their land. Minnesota, from Minnesota, the name the Dakotas gave the Minnesota River, whose clear blue water reflected clouds. Mississippi, from Mississippi, Ojibwe for the Great River, along which more than 20 tribes lived and fished. Missouri, for the Missouria tribe that lived on the Missouri River, a Siouan people whose name means town of the big canoes. Nebraska, from Nebraska, the Omaha word for broad water, a description of the Platte River by which the tribe lived. New Mexico, named for the Mexicas, a Nahuatl-speaking people who ruled the Aztec Empire until the Spanish conquered them in 1519. North and South Dakota, named for a Sioux tribe whose men were sentenced in 1862 to the largest mass execution in U.S. history, though Dakota means friend. Ohio, from Ohio, continuously giving river in the language of the Senecas, whose land was flooded in 1965 following construction of Kinzua Dam. Oklahoma, from Oklahoma, Choctaw for brave people, a name proposed by the chief of the Choctaw Nation during treaty negotiations in 1866. Oregon, maybe from Warrigan, an Algonquian word for beautiful river, but so many native words and languages have been lost that it's hard to say. Tennessee, for the Cherokee town Tanasi, a village on the Little Tennessee River, until the Cherokees were marched to Oklahoma along the Trail of Tears. Texas, meaning friends or allies in the language of the Caddos, who were removed to Oklahoma in 1859. Utah, from Utahai, an Apache word meaning people of the mountain. Wisconsin, from Mesconsing, the name for the Wisconsin River in the Miami language, river running through a red place. Wyoming, a contraction of Mechi-Weamiing, a Delaware word first used for a valley in Pennsylvania, meaning at the Big Plains. And yes, every part of this land is Indian country, from forest to desert, mountain to prairie, Manhattan to Yosemite, Tallahassee to Seattle, all the fields, rivers, hills, and canyons between the two shining seas. So, thank you. I'm happy to give the broadside to anyone who buys the book. Otherwise, I'm selling the broadside for $2. And the next poem I'll read brings us to California. This is called I Am Amazed. I am amazed by the Arches Cluster, the most crowded place in the Milky Way, jam-packed with stars, 25,000 light years from Earth in Sagittarius. By Earth, whirling through space, the only planet known to have free oxygen, liquid water, whales, wallabies, and redwood forests. By a single redwood tree, 350 feet tall and 10 feet in diameter, standing above the Pacific since Herod was exiled to Gaul. By a single redwood needle, flat, with 2 silvery bands on its underside and inner machinery endlessly churning out ATP. By a molecule of ATP, which carries energy in all the cells of people and trees, a currency required for love and breathing. By 2 children, a boy and a girl playing under the sea, who spot a speckled woodpecker with a red patch on its head, tapping the bark, igniting a blaze of amazement. So I will just read 2 more poems. And the way this book is structured, we start in faraway countries, in Europe and Latin America, and then we come to the U.S. And if you read the book, through, I'm skipping a lot of things, obviously. In the U.S., after Names of the States, we start on the East Coast, and then we come to the Midwest, and then the Southwest, and then California, and we're working our way back to my house. So the place in the last few poems in the book is my house in Oakland. So this is a book called Trespasser that takes place at my house. The man who lived under my garage broke into the storage space, replaced my lock with his own to doze beside the woodpile in an orange sleeping bag with a blue sheet, his head resting on a dirty pillow. He ate saltines, drank beer, and read Scarecrow, Mercy, Hell's Corner, The Scarpetta Factor, and The Magic of Sex. When he rose, he put on black boots, cracked and crusty, and a tattered backpack to sell street spirit and panhandle near Safeway. I changed the lock and left his things outside in 4 large trash bags and 2 crates with notes asking him to take them away. Of course, he never did. But he came back, easily picked the lock to my dreams, to drift past rocky islands in a red canoe with no paddles, his shattered reflection wavering on green water, and stand beneath a giant poison mushroom for protection from rain, as I worried where he slept now and watched him step from the black and white world of an old film into rainbow flames. And the last poem that I'll read is the last poem in the book, and it's called Going. I always used to think I was going somewhere, to work at the little museum under the movie theater, to a meeting with my boss at the hospital on the other side of town, to Paris, where I could have an affair with a handsome Frenchman, to New York, where I might find an agent to sell my book, to a romantic restaurant for dinner with my husband, to the movie where a serviceman falls in love, to the movie where a married couple is always fighting, to the movie where an old couple looks backward and forward, wondering if they're still in love, back to my house, which is always in need of paint or repairs, to a better job, a better vacation, a better house, a better marriage, a better movie, a better life. Now I see all destinations as stepping stones, just temporary stops until the last. The journey itself, a sack of diamonds, all journeys as one journey, with wind or wheels propelling me forward through desert and forest as I create the only path. So thank you. Thank you very much. And now you're going to be treated to a film featuring Jim, and somebody else will tell you all about the film.
Yeah, we'll explain the process here a little bit. Thanks so much. All right. So, indeed, that was wonderful. It's always great to sort of just find out what I'm going to encounter when I encounter it, you know. And that's what always happens at these readings. So, appreciate it. Joyce, Lucy, Jim, wherever Jim is. Back there somewhere. There you are. So, the rest of the evening will unfold in its own way now, like all this has so far. Jordan Freeman is up from Los Angeles. He's made a film with Jim called Sea State. Jim provides some thoughts on the soundtrack to that, a lot of thoughts. So that's going to take a little technical thing. We're going to say goodbye to the live stream audience out there because we don't really have a way to integrate that into the live stream. But I'm going to ask Jordan to come up, explain the film while they're still out there listening, and explain it to you. And then we'll take a break. There's still wine in those bottles there. And then we'll get the machinery doing what it's supposed to do, thanks to Jordan's immense patience and savvy. So anyway, Jordan, why don't you come on up and tell them what you've done and what you got for them, and then we'll say goodbye to the live stream folks. Do buy a broadside, a book. Donate to Poetry Flash. That would be nice, right? You didn't bring any books, I don't think.
No.
So just the one she read from, which I think she had to chase all over town for. So support these poets in various ways that you can. We're able to give a little honorarium to the poets just because the neighborhood supports us, and we're very appreciative of that. And we usually put out a bucket if you want to throw a few more dollars at them and you don't want to buy physical stuff or send stuff to Poetry Flash. You can throw a few bucks in the bucket if you want, or not. This one is the sheet that talks about poets. That one says poets, the other one says musicians. I'll put that here, but whatever. That's not the most important thing. The most important is thank you for listening to their poetry, and I think you're going to enjoy the film. So, take it away.
So I'll keep it pretty brief. Basically, I was at Santa Cruz getting a master's degree and was living up on a farm when COVID hit. That happened to be where Jim was living at the time as well. And we hadn't really gotten to know each other much, and suddenly we were quarantined there together. And I remember one specific time where we were sitting around this campfire at the farm with the reality sinking in, and decided, not knowing how apocalyptic things were going to get. And there was a conversation about, well, we have a boat. Jim knows how to fish. We'll be able to get some fish out of the sea and combined with some veggies from the farm, survive. So we started fishing and not really catching anything, but having some awesome conversations. And it wound up just sort of evolving into the project that I did for my master's at the school, and this other experiment in multi-screen work, but very much inspired by just hours and hours and hours of stories that Jim was gracious enough to let me record while we were on the water. So it took that and a few excerpts from poems and put this piece together that, it kind of evolved into place as very nicely with complicated origins, both in Jim and in the film itself.
He cheated a little bit because I didn't know he was recording me for a long time.
No, I told you. You had to put the mic on right there. It was, yeah, clipped to that thing in your pocket. If that's your story, I'm okay with that. That'll do.
So, Jordan, do tell the home audience how they can find the film. They could maybe email you for a link to it.
Yeah. jfreemanfilm@gmail.com. I'll send you a link to it. That'd be great. Cool. Encourage, definitely don't watch it on your phone. It becomes very small. So on a computer, on a TV, anything like that is fine, but you won't be able to make it out if it's on a telephone. Good to go?
Yeah, so the cleaning is on the way. You all, I'm going to bring more cups, water, and there is some wine there. So this is, 10-minute break. So we'll be ready in like 15 or 20 or
I bet we
12.
can get it in quicker than
He's
that.
very confident, and I'm confident of his confidence, so that's
Okay.
fine. But do feel free to drink a little something. Thank you all.
Oh, thank you.
On the bottom center.
Pleasure to be here.
Bottom
Thanks
center.
for,
All right.
for this.
Well, thank you.
Still
for
got to
always
figure out where it
encourage
goes.
me from afar to let you know what's going on. It's actually, it's nice to know you're out there.
I do. I
appreciate I make it a little bit difficult.
You do.
We're gonna get better. Laura Leanna, she's gonna get better.
I get it. I try
Yeah, I know you.
to get it in there, and I put whenever I can. I feature, little pictures.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. I've peeked on occasion, but yeah, wow, this is the widescreen presentation. How do you like that? So this, I'll go ahead and kill all the sound and turn off